Joel, do you think we have entered a new global order?
I think we have. I think it's been a long time coming, because many of the trends that have kind of come to the fore have been around for almost a century, actually over a century, but it's become crystallized. I think one of the most important things that has occurred is that this fantasy of a globalized world has been shattered by the realization, first in the pandemic, but now in Ukraine, that nation states do matter. If you want to get a vaccine, you don't rely on an international organization like the WHO. If you rely on your government. If you want to feel secure and feel that you're part of some community, then a nation becomes very, very important. And that's come to the fore in a way that's unfortunately highly conflictual. And at the moment, we're faced with a world where the balance of power is in the process of being established. It's far from clear how it's going to play out. But one thing that is absolutely, without a doubt, is that we're now moving into a highly conflictual world order where Ukraine is really just the beginning. That's going to unravel all the assumptions that we used to take for granted ever since the Second World War.
On that same point about the ideals of kind of national sovereignty, freedom, self-determination have been spoken about over the last few weeks quite a lot. Do you think that they have taken on a renewed meaning? Because over the last few years within the West, they've almost been discredited and criticised and come under challenge. But now we are seeing those same ideals be at the forefront of the struggle of Ukrainian people.
I think so. And I think more broadly, the very fact that nations throughout the world now realize that you cannot rely on anybody else other than your government. Now realize, for example, that when push comes to shove, a country like the Ukraine is not going to get the support that they were kind of semi-promised by NATO and by the Americans. When people begin to think about it, they understand that somehow or another they're going to have to form new alliances that will involve governments rather than international globalized institutions.
And Frank, what do you make of the Western response so far? Do you think that it has reignited the moral purpose of NATO or shown its fractures? Do you think it's been more virtue signalling or actually real material action? What do you make of it so far?
It's very complicated. I think the Western response is much more about seeming to do things rather than getting down to the nitty-gritty. One of the problems that we're faced with is that European governments, NATO member states, have stopped thinking about the importance of foreign policy. It's got a very infantilized sort of system of defense. The armies of these countries have been allowed to unravel. These governments have not been able to mobilize their own population behind any national purpose. So we have a situation where none of the NATO member states have got a population or people who actually want to fight a war. Neither the Americans, nor the British, nor the French. They really don't want to have that kind of patriotic sensibility. So in that sense, what you've got is a very cautious process, a very technocratic process of let's give them some arms, let's have a few sanctions here and there, let's rely on economics. And in the course of doing that, they're forgetting one very important lesson of history, which is the minute you begin to wage an economic war against another nation, as they're doing today, that's really the prelude to getting into a military one, because at some point, the country that you're targeting economically will have no choice but to, in a sense, respond in a political or military fashion. Otherwise, their whole economy will be destroyed. So there's a kind of, it's early days yet. The only good thing, it seems to me, is that the people of the West in particular have become inspired and enthused by what they see happening in the Ukraine. And it will remind a lot of people that at the end of the day, war is not something that's in history. War is part of our life today. And I think that's a very important lesson for us to draw on, so that we can force our governments to be a little bit more grown up than they are at the moment.